Good morning, everyone. I'm Andrew Hunt, and I'll be sharing with you my high school experience. I have a compilation of several standards and artifacts that I'm going to be showing you today. And the first one is history. Now, I wanted to show history because history was by far, within all of high school, one of my favorite classes, starting from 9th grade in global perspectives all the way to government and politics in 12th grade. This was one of my favorite classes. I felt like I was most energetic, had the most energy in this class, so I definitely wanted to show my growth and mastery within this class and basically what I did and how I grew. And just my standards are going to be, or my artifacts are going to be my first student-led discussion and my last student-led discussion. And so I'm just going to be focusing on mastery within those. And at junior year, we started American history, and junior and senior year were very different from our freshman and sophomore year because we started being interactive with the class. We had classroom discussions and student-led discussions wherein the student had the ability to teach the class and have interactions with the class. And we were, assigned, and we got the opportunity to pick several topics, readings, or discussions to focus our discussions on. And so those will be my artifacts I'm showing. So my first one is the Northwest Ordinance, and it was a discussion I chose to do. We also did On Property by James Madison, and this was my very first discussion within junior year, first semester, and it was a pretty rough ride because it was the first time we did it. And here's a quote on my rubric. It says, "Depth is lacking, engagement is minimal, 21 minutes long, supposed to be 40. 21 minutes. That was pretty sad. That was a very embarrassing experience, quite frankly. To be half your time when you have 40 minutes is quite horrible for the first time, especially as a junior in the first semester early in the year. That was definitely hard. And at that point on, I made the initial decision in my mind that history might not be my favorite class. But that changed, of course. It definitely was, and things got better. And I used this as basically a growing experience. And that was very hard to learn early on. That was actually extraordinarily hard to learn. Another quote, "Main idea is not repeated, redo offered but not accepted by students," because there was 3 of us, and none of us accepted the redo, which was, allowed room for growth later on. We didn't take it right away, so. And then this is a picture of the rubric. You can see the quotes at the bottom, and we got a 3 on it, which is okay, not that great. I'm utterly shocked that we got a 3 on it, quite frankly, actually. I was honestly expecting a 2 or a 1.5. Very grateful for that 3, however. And so this kind of represented and showed my mindset in the early stages of junior year. The growth mindset was not implemented at this point yet, and I honestly wasn't in a total nervous or stressful situation, and I thought the year would get better, and it did, but I didn't take those opportunities right away. And so I'm going to show my second standard, which will really entail the mastery and growth within history, and how I basically did that. So my second artifact is a John Dewey discussion. The author was John Dewey. The article was Liberalism and Social Action. This was the last discussion I did the second semester of the senior year, and within this I basically built up a thesis and argument, taught the class for about 45 minutes with a partner. And this is once again a quote on the rubric. "Excellent, great knowledge and connections. Leading was good, however, the lesson plan was, quote, weak." One of the reasons I began to be very comfortable after multiple times of teaching, so my lesson plans kind of fell behind because I felt like I had no need for them. But other than that, I felt as my discussion was very strong, and as the rubric said, it was overall good. And here's my rubric once again. It looks overall the same, however, some of the criteria has changed. The standards are more specific, and the quotes are within excellent, great knowledge, as I said. Lesson plan was weak, but however, other than that, I felt like I mastered this standard, and this was my last discussion that I did within that class. And I feel like over time, I took the opportunity to learn and grow and basically critique myself and basically learn from myself and grow off of that. And I also had the ability to do that within my apprenticeship with Mr. Jacob, but I will get into that more later because that is my third standard. And so history conclusion, I showed mastery and growth in basically making a thesis, a presentation of a subject, an idea, a person, or reading. I definitely felt as though I gained a mastery of that and solidified that. Connection of ideas, basically making a thesis, supporting it, defending it, and having basically an adequate time to teach the class on a certain subject in history. And my next artifact and standard I wanted to show was within science. This was my chemistry class, 11th grade, with Mr. Kendall. And as many other students have said, chemistry and science as a whole is definitely my weak spot. I was in no sense strong in science, specifically chemistry. But at the same time, I wanted to show growth and mastery within this, as I did exceptionally well, in my opinion, on the final. And I showed growth without the whole year. So I decided to show that for this standard. The first artifact is a test very early on, just a quiz within the first semester, and it goes over some of the basic standards of the chemistry class, parts of an atom, combustion systems, and equations, basically, and using stoichiometry. Very basic stuff that we learned within the first stages of our chemistry class. And so it was a fundamentals summative assessment. And the standards, and this is a quote from the rubric: understanding how all matter is composed of atoms, illustrate how chemical reactions involve rearrangement of atoms, and describe how matter changes. I received a 2 on the first standard and a 2.25 on the second standard, and here's an example of the rubric and my work as shown, and that's my work as well as some of the critiques, add-ons, and changes made to it. And I gave myself a 2.25 in both areas, but Mr. Kendall gave me a 2 in the first and agreed with my 2.25 in the second. And I use this as a first standard because I can show growth within my second standard, which is the final. So our final was basically, we were given a scenario and a setup, as well as 5 or 6 chemicals that we basically had to pick one, do complete run-throughs and diagrams and basically breakdowns of each chemical and figure out which one was the most efficient, which one worked the best for the given scenario, and which one we would personally choose for a given scenario. And we wrote a several-page lab report on this, had several pages and diagrams of work, chemical reactions and combustion reactions, as well as heat formations and other sorts of things within the paper. The chemicals were Ni3, TNT, RDX, TATP, and nitroglycerine. Out of these, we basically had to figure out which was best for the given scenario within the assignment. I received an overall 4 in this assignment, and I was very proud of this. This was the last thing to do over a years of work, and I felt a huge sense of accomplishment after I finished this. And here's just the first paper of the lab report. There was no really written criteria on there. If anything, it was just spoken at the at the end because it was a last day of school assignment. So science conclusion, this goes along hand in hand with the history. I learned how to basically articulate, make a thesis, and put that and inform that within a paper and defend that, set that up, and make it, and basically defend it for the rest of the assignment and thereon after. My last standard that I mentioned previously is my apprenticeship standard. For my apprenticeship, I will be showing is my third apprenticeship, which was with Mr. Jacob, and I had the opportunity to teach the junior class in the first semester of junior year. Of senior year, junior year for them, because I was teaching the juniors American history. And this was an awesome opportunity. It basically it also helped me with my own assignments within history and government and supplemented that. But I had the opportunity to teach and grade assignments. It was a very awesome experience, hands-on learning all over, and it was awesome. And my first artifact is going to be a statement 16 within the American history, because the class is divided within statements, and each statement has, an interpretation, several things, learning criteria. And I taught on the Monroe Doctrine within statement 16, a very influential and pivotal document within American history. And so this is just a lesson review I made because I taught the class and I wanted some sort of lesson review so I could go off of and bounce ideas off of. And this is just a very basic document I made to basically base my points upon. And all the pen marks, those are mine. Those aren't Mr. Jacobs, because this was all mine and my ideas and basically what I wanted to do with the class at that time. So that's my first artifact. And then my second artifact is actually presentation slides on the George Washington's farewell address, as that was also another pretty big assignment and reading we did within Mr. Jacobs' class. And as you will know, the presentation has changed because these are just slides straight from the document that I put in, basically. So this is the actual presentation I made. I made an overarching question and answer. What was the purpose of Washington's farewell speech, and what did it do as a structural fundamental document for America? And I taught on this. The purpose of the speech was to address several problems, concerns within the nation. This was just one of my slides that I taught off of and what I made and showed to the students to teach them. Within this apprenticeship, I showed mastery, taught multiple lessons, and had the opportunity to have, a hands-on work experience with students. And it was honestly amazing, and it was very supplemental to my learning also within, government in 12th grade, which was, very different and hard, but this helped me along the way. Conclusion, showed mastery in history, science, and growth in apprenticeship. But the main takeaway and so what from all of this is the fact that in every single one of these and in every single one of our classes throughout all of high school, there's been a basic theme found basically everywhere. And in every single class, math, science, English, history, I don't care what it is because it's all the same at the end of the day. We have a thesis, we develop it, we defend it, and this is what we learn in every single class. And Mr. Jacob has taught this as well in his apprenticeship, that we have worldviews, and in every single class that's evident. And through all these standards and all these 4 years, that's what I've learned more than anything, is how to make a thesis within my own life, make it applicable to myself, and defend it. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning.
So this thesis, so what? How is it going to help you from here on out once you've gone on from Compass?
Oh, this will help me throughout my whole life in the way that we have a worldview, and my thesis is my worldview, and that several things in my life will come and counteract that or challenge it or whatever you may be or say. And I've learned how to make my own theses, make my own papers, and make my own ideas. And sometimes those change over time. Sometimes you need to change over time because, it's quite pointless in defending a lost cause, and you need to change over time at some points. But at the same time, you need to learn how to hold your ground, and that's what we've done throughout these 4 years. Hold your ground and change over time. And that's what we've learned. At the end of the day, that's all this is learning to adapt, develop, and defend all your thesis and your worldview. Yes, thank you.
Good job. It's very cool to see how you have pieced together all of your subjects in the end with this final so what. That was really, really cool to hear. So you're coming out of Compass with mastering all these different areas and this thought process about the different theses. So what advice would you give to a incoming 9th grader so they can come out with this similar mindset that you have?
Know who you are, know what you want to do, and know your goals. Know who you want to be. It doesn't have to be specific. And find a hero. Find someone you want to look forward to. Find someone that you want to be like. And don't necessarily copy everything they do, but know what you want to be, honestly. That's what's going to help you more than anything, is know what you want in the end. That's all I have to say.
You stumped me, Andrew, because I am so impressed by the way that you connected. As teachers, we're oftentimes talking about transference. In other words, if I teach in English, that you have a thesis and then you support it, and then you have a so what, and then Mr. Jacob teaches the statement fact interpretation, and we're all trying to teach the same thing, and you get it. You were like, okay, it's the same in all the classes, and so I'm so impressed with that. And then you also took it a step further and talked about how in life, you're making an argument and you're supporting it, and that's the development of your worldview, and that it's changing over time, and you're accepting or rejecting ideas. So anyway, I was just very impressed with the way that you articulated that.
Thank you very much.
So let's see, I guess maybe I'll just ask you about your research that you did, your senior research paper. Oh, this is really Can you talk to us about what you researched and
Yes,
what you
I
found?
can. My senior research paper was on Belgian imperialism in the Congo, what that did, the effects thereof. And I was very interested in that because, Mr. Jacobs' class, as I said, history was my favorite class. I learned so much in that class. But we would always, study imperialism, colonization, things like that. And I was very interested in the specific example of the Congo. And, every time you hear the Billy Joel song, "We Didn't Start the Fire," he says, "Belgium's in the Congo." It's years about 1960. And I always wondered why that was. And so I wrote my research paper on it. And it was a very simple reason. I was just curious, quite frankly. But, I found out a lot about colonization, the African continent as a whole, reasons why some countries are third world countries, Congo's influence in the Cold War, things like that. It was honestly pretty straightforward. I mean, I'm going to be honest, it was a dry research historical document. I mean, it's about colonization and, countries and politics. It's very boring, but I just learned about basically, Congo's independence, things like that, and how it affected other nations around it, and things like the UN, NATO, United States, and Russia's, the USSR's, influence on the Congo, things like that. I would say it was interesting and fun, but you guys probably wouldn't. Yeah.